Hello, everyone, and welcome to PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. My name is Guy Dawson, and I am the managing member of Classic Communications, a full-service public relations and marketing company. And I have been really honored to have the opportunity to become involved in really the presentation of an aspect of life that is so prominent in our community right now, but I think is very overlooked. And with some of the circumstances that are happening in our country, everyone is very aware of things that are happening in relations to police brutality, the rights of victims, specifically African American victims. And me, with this media platform, I'm wanting to present this from the perspective of some of the families that have been a part of brutality at the hands of police. And so we're using the PR Connections radio show and PRConnectionsRadio.com to share some interviews with these families, to bring humanity to all of this. Because for me, I think one of the issues that a lot of people are having when I watch the news or when I hear people talking about things related to some of the deaths that have been coming at the hands of police, or the rioting that they talk about, or even the peaceful protests, is the removal of the human element of it. And so when I get to sit down and I talk to human beings who have been affected directly by things that have happened at the hands of the police, it's more about getting people to see that this is bigger than just some big story that gets blown up for a little while and then everyone forgets about it. That there are human beings who continue to be impacted as a result of the death of a family member. And all of us have lost some family member at one time or another. I'm sure we have. And these people have lost a family member in a very dramatic fashion, sometimes as a result of actual murder by some of the people who are supposed to be protecting the laws of people in this country. And so today, my friend Nissa Tzun, she is with Forced Trajectory Project. We've known each other for many years, and she is the person who is connecting me with families who have been affected by police brutality. And we're going to be speaking with Jackie Lawrence. Jackie Lawrence is the mother of Keith Childress Jr. He is a young man that was murdered by police, died at the police back in 2015. And I want to hear about her journey. That was quite a few years ago, almost 5 years ago. And so as life goes on, but people have to continue to live. And so over about the next hour, we're going to be speaking with her and Nissa. I really appreciate having another opportunity to connect with someone who is a part of your organization. And could you really quickly share about what Forced Trajectory Project does?
Sure. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, my name is Nissa Tzun, and I am the co-founder of the Forced Trajectory Project. We are a media PR advocacy organization working out of Las Vegas, but we started in New York about 11 years ago. And our interest in this work had to do with understanding the impact and aftermath of police violence, and that is beginning with the families who are those who have lost loved ones to law enforcement. And so in this journey, my partner and I, Oja, who's also the co-founder of Forced Trajectory, we came in as artists, as media makers interested in investigating and really answering for ourselves also the questions that we had. Why is it that when we hear about police killings, that the narrative is so the official narrative that comes from the police and the media is so different from what families are saying they experience? And so we decided to create a multimedia project around the aftermath and impact of police violence, working with family members and working with witnesses that were on scene that saw what happened, and getting those stories out and really centering their experiences. So that's the Forced Trajectory Project, and we've covered stories across the nation, but we also have a vested interest in that local impact, right? What can media do locally to impact the local community and get people to really pay attention to what's happening in their backyard?
And as we talked before, when we got on the air, Nissa, I just wanted to let you know how much the community appreciates the hard work that you're putting into sharing these stories and bringing people together to show a bigger picture of all of this. And again, I'm going to be speaking with Jackie, and she is the mother of someone who died at the hands of police. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
Hi.
So, Jackie, I would like for you first to give us some background behind what happened to your son. Let's start.
All right. My son is Keith Childress Jr. He went to Las Vegas December 31st, 2015 to celebrate New Year's at 2:33 in the afternoon. And I have to say it again, 2:33 in the afternoon, the police mistook his cell phone for a gun in his hand. And basically, they stole my son's life at that time of the day, 2:33.
How did you find out about it?
Well, I was at work. It was about 5:30, and my phone kept going off in my drawer, and so I couldn't take it out because I was at work. So I work in a bank, and in the bank we have a lot of TVs. So I had saw the airing of a boy that was a young man that was murdered in Las Vegas, wanted for murder. And my first thoughts are, wow, that's really sad. You know, even though they say he was wanted for murder, I feel really bad that kid got killed. So about 15 minutes later, my manager comes over to me and she just stands there. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, can you get off the phone for a few minutes? And I'm like, yeah. So I walk over to her, she takes me in the office and she shows me the TV. And that's really all I remember at that point. Nobody had contacted me. Nobody had say, hey, this is what happened to your son. So basically what happened after that is they contacted my husband. My husband came to the job, picked me up, and we headed out to Vegas immediately. I was calling the police station. They would not give me any information. I contacted about 12 p.m. when I hit Vegas. I did contact the coroner's office, and basically that's how I found out it was my son.
Wow. So you were thinking about what empathy you had for that person and their family, and then you ended up being the person who needed to have the empathy for you.
Right.
When you have such a traumatic thing like that comes from out of nowhere, obviously the emotions are really strong. I mean, that goes without saying, but
Right.
will you talk to us about the circumstances, and did you start asking a lot of questions right away? Where did you transition after that?
After that, on my way to Vegas, all I remember is I kept calling and calling and calling the police station. Like, did something happen to my son? My son's name is Keith. They would put me on hold. They would tell me to wait a minute, somebody's coming to the phone, and nobody would come. Um, so when I hit Vegas and found out it was my son in the coroner's office, I reached out to the police station again and said, I want to see my son. um, they wouldn't allow me. They told me basically that I was going to have to get a court order to identify my son.
Hmm.
And then from that point, basically a lot of people were, they saw it on the news stuff. A lot of people were contacting me, and I got a little bit of help. And that person reached out to the police station. They contacted me and gave me a time to come down and look at my son.
And of course, you saw this on the news. You went, you found out it was your son. So this is a high profile case, something out of the ordinary. With it being so high profile, what did you see next? What happened?
So the next thing I did was I contacted the media because the media was posting, first of all, that my child was wanted for murder, which was complete lies. They also stated that my son was a wanted man, and which was complete lies. So I had them change all of their stories. That was the first step, is because the first thing they did is try to destroy my son's character. They didn't know my son. They never got the facts. They never called Phoenix to find out if that was true about my child before they aired it all over the news. So that was the first thing that I did. And the second thing I did is I started contacting lawyers because I knew something was wrong. They wouldn't allow me to see him. The press told us that they were not allowed to go up there for hours and hours where my son was shot at. So at that point, I knew something was very fishy about the situation. They told me that my son had a gun in his hand. At first, I didn't even know it was a cell phone. I'm trying to figure out, where did my child get this gun from? So finally, when I talked to the media, they did tell me that they had found out it was a cell phone.
So they mistook the cell phone for a gun? Was that the story?
Yes, at 2:33 in the afternoon, broad daylight.
So you hire a lawyer. Now you're starting to try to piece the whole thing together. What did you discover as you started working with these lawyers about the case?
I discovered this is a very common thing that they do. The first thing they do is destroy the victim's character so that it's not looked at on the police, but just basically stating he deserved it. I also do know about the video cams. They do cut them because the video that I was shown at the police station after I had to beg to see the video to find out what happened was not the same video that they aired on the news. So I'm trying to figure out how there was two videos. Both officers were supposed to wear a body cam, but now they said that one of the body cams were off. The other officer's body cam went down as he started shooting. And I would like to say it was Officer Bohannon from the Metro Police Department, which retired a week after my son was murdered.
Oh, so one of the officers that was involved in the shooting retired right after the shooting.
Yes. And I believe he's only like 34 years old, something around there.
Huh. So, okay, so now you're seeing that things are suspicious. Now you've got attorneys that are helping you out because obviously you need someone to be able to guide you as you're trying to put the pieces together. On a more personal level, where are you? I mean, obviously you've lost your son. Now you sound very, I mean, you've been through this.
I'm
right?
angry. I'm angry. We didn't deserve this. My son didn't deserve to die at 23 years old. And the rest of these families that I'm now meeting that are, when this happens, they don't just kill your loved one, they kill you too. And my world has been upside down. So what I've decided to do is support other families. Right now we have a campaign going around, families are the front line, because we need to uplift these families. We know what it's like to be sitting there at 3 a.m. not having anybody to talk to. So we are now out there on the front line. We're going from state to state, city to city, and supporting these other families. And that's basically my life now. I want justice for my son. I want them to reopen that case up and charge these officers.
At what point did they close the case?
Well, they had a special little meeting that I was unaware of. I just happened to be online one day and ran across it. And I'm like, what is this? So I ended up going to that court appearance, and that's where they stated that the officers were not going to be held accountable. They stated it was justified.
So you were there when they made that announcement that that it was case closed. These officers were acting within their duties as police officers, and nothing else was going to be done.
Right. And just to let you know, the officer that killed Keith was not even on duty at the time. He was at home. Heard the call, jumped in his car, and drove completely across town to murder my child.
Why did he do that? I mean, what did I
That's a
mean?
big
What?
question I have. That's a bad, I mean, I thought when you're off work, you're off work. This officer decided to get in his car, go across town, and murder my child.
So the case is closed, and so at that point, I know you're talking about that you've been doing advocacy work with other
Yeah.
families.
Mm-hmm.
What, as far as getting the case reopened, how does that work?
Well, we got to, first of all, get rid of the district attorney. I mean, the district attorney, they do this on a lot of cases. Even if the officer gets arrested, they're not charged. The district attorney jumps in there and lets them go, basically, is what happens. So I think that they do that just to kind of get the families off of the edge. And then, eventually they get released. So the officers who killed my son were never charged. They went out on paid vacation. From people doing research, came across some things and pictures of them, one of the officers in Hawaii. While I'm at home dealing with how to bury my child, this officer gets paid leave and goes on vacation. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So the case is closed, and like you had mentioned before, now you're starting to. I mean, you have your own personal, very difficult challenges. Obviously, losing your son, not being able to get any answers,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start working with other families who are experiencing the same thing. So for you, has that did that start to be therapeutic for you? And
Mm-hmm.
like you
Yeah.
had mentioned, for being able to talk to other people who had been through something similar to what you've been through.
Absolutely. I know what it's like, and there's no guidebook to this. So when this happens, you're kind of like, what do I do next? I don't think most people have not planned their children's funerals. What do you do? How do you go about all this stuff? So that's why I go out there on the front line. I contact all the mothers that I can get a hold of, our fathers, whichever's needed that lose their children, give them my phone number because I know what it's like not to have somebody there to support you. So I want to be somebody there for them.
And so you've been working with these families over the last couple of years. You're a support group pretty much for one another, which I mean
Mhm.
is I think probably something I would think that has really helped you a lot, and you've helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, and then how many other situations have you been a part of between now? Because I want to get to our current situation in a second. But over these last, say, 4 or 5 years, how many of these types of situations have you been a part of, and what's that been like?
Do you mean with the families?
Yes.
Yeah, I have been going to a lot of events. It is very therapeutic because it lets you know you're not alone. Everything that you're wondering while you're going through your grieving process, you really don't know what's happening to you at that time. So there's steps to it. So it's very important that I go out there and share my story with others so that they understand that first of all, you're going to get through it. I know it's hard, but we got to learn to live with it. We have no other choice. They're not coming back. I also, it's very therapeutic to me because when we all get together, we strategize. We figure out what our next steps are. We need to tear this system down, and we need as many people that we can to get help, to come in and help us. We've got to tear the system down. I cannot stand by and just sit here and watch these killings and these killings and these killings. I just can't sit down and watch it anymore.
So you've been a part of this movement for a while, and now it's really taken on a whole nother level with the death of George Floyd and
Yeah,
Arbery, and you have someone almost every day, it seems, that's
yeah.
almost being killed at the hands of the police. What
Mhm.
is it like for you now that this is really becoming something that has gone completely mainstream? It's in all the headlines, and it's a big part of everything that's going on in the country right now. What is it like for you?
Well, it's hard. It's hard. It feels like all the trauma is coming right back again. We relive this every single day. And every time there's another killing, it makes it worse on us. So, excuse me. It's been hard. I'm also help raising his 3-year-old daughter that was born 6 months after he passed. So it's been really hard. And because of all this, it has caused me a lot of health problems. I'm actually needing surgery at this time. I'm trying to raise funds for that so that I can get the surgery. It's been very hard. Every day is hard.
Right, and like you said, here we go. We've got this at all the wounds are reopened
Mhm.
because this is such a hyper present topic right now. Have you had a
Right.
lot of press reaching back out to you to talk to you about your experiences?
I have. I've had a lot of press reach out to me. Um, but what I want to say is that there's a whole lot more families than just George Floyd. Rest in peace, George Floyd. I am so sad this had to happen to him, but I am glad that the whole world is standing up now. I am glad, and we need to lift all of these families. It's not just George Floyd who passed away. It's not, just Mike Brown or Trayvon Martin. You know, we're all sorry that this has happened, but there's a whole lot of other families out here grieving about their babies. And their names need to be heard. I mean, the parents need to, the families need to be heard.
And for you, of course, you've lost your son, which is a horrible loss. I have a son right now that's 20 years old. I just can't, he's a little black boy, right? I mean, he's
Right.
an adult, but he's 20. I mean, your son was a very young man. They're out in the world, and things can happen to them. You have lost your son. You're doing good work and working with these families. If you could kind of wave a magic wand, if that were possible, and make all of this better for the next person through your experience that is potentially going to go through this, what would you have to say?
I would say let's go after the police union. Let's make change. We got to start now. Um, I don't want my granddaughter to grow up in a world like this. And everybody needs to come together. We got to stop this. We got to fix this now, not tomorrow, not the next day, because don't think it won't happen to you. I never thought I would be sitting here. And here I sit.
Yeah, and again, as I had mentioned when I started the interview, Jackie, is that when Nissa first, I started talking to her. I reached out to her when things really started to kick off here because I knew how engaged she was in this type of work. And when she talked to me about specifically wanting to connect with the families of people who had gone through this police brutality, I'm gonna bring you back in here, Nissa. So there you go. And so when I was first talking to Nissa about, what is the path that we could go on, she right off the bat suggested that we connect with people, the families of victims of this brutality, and it's been a wonderful experience having the opportunity to really hear the perspective of
Right.
someone. You know what I mean? Because I've read a lot of headlines, watched a lot of things on the news. I mean, as far as police brutality, racial profiling, and things like that, I mean, I was born in South Central LA, right? So
Right.
this is not an uncommon thing for me. I mean, my father, my uncles, me personally, so many of my friends have experienced police brutality. There's nothing odd at all about this, but this perspective that you're bringing to it, this is what it's all about, Jackie. It's about the humanity. And it's what I said on the last broadcast, and I want to repeat it every single time, is that talking to people like you brings a really human side to this. Because there are people, I think, that don't think black men are human. I mean, really. And that somehow this is something that is okay to happen to us.
Right.
And so you sharing your story and the great work that you're doing, Nissa, for me, again, this is all about showing a whole different side to this. So I really appreciated what you had to say today. And Nissa, you're doing a lot of hard work out there. I know you said you've been traveling a lot, and what's it like on the front lines out there right now?
Peace, everyone. So yeah, so we actually, Jackie was with me on both occasions. We did a Families Are the Frontline press conference and vigil in Las Vegas, June 6th. And then we also had Charlene Lyle's third year Angelversary, June 18th, last Thursday in Seattle. And so that was organized by Charlene Lyle's cousin, Katrina Johnson, who's also part of the Families Are the Frontline campaign as one of the main organizers, which is a directly impacted led campaign, so families who have been impacted are leading this campaign. They're the ones that are making the decisions. They're the ones that are saying, where is this happening next? And that's really important to support that, because this all came from a panel that we had on June 1st that we hosted, Force Trajectory Project. We had 8 family members across the nation who have been impacted by police violence on this panel. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's available on our website, forcetrajectory.com. You can also find it on our Facebook page, but it's going to be easier to find on our website in the talks section. And during that 2-hour panel, what we found out was that, families obviously are re-traumatized every time this happens, especially when it blows up and it's like an everyday experience again, just like when it first happened to them. And some of the families expressed that they had been turned away and basically told not to speak at certain events about police violence. And, having done this work for 11 years now, it seems to happen a lot more now. It used to be, I come from New York. So in New York, there was always a huge group of very active family members, and they were always centered when it came to events on police brutality and police violence and terrorism. But I guess the new generation is I guess there's a little bit of a communication disconnect. And so the reason why Families Are the Frontline campaign began was because it was a response to that panel, kind of like, hey, families on that panel, Victor Dempsey and Katrina Johnson and Marissa Barrera, they were like, we can't continue to allow this kind of thing to happen. Like, families are the front line, and frankly, families need to be there and reestablish themselves as people that are on the front line of this movement. So Vegas was very, very successful. It was a really successful event. We had a lot of people come out and just deeply listen to these stories. We had about probably over 30 family members representing maybe 20 some cases from all over the country, but also local cases. And part of the issue that we've been dealing with as activists working on this issue is the media aspect of it, right? So just like what Jackie was saying about George Floyd, it's like, yes, that's one family, but that's like literally like the cases that we know of, that we know the names of, that everybody knows of because of all the national news that those cases get. That's less than 1% of the actual reality of what we're facing. And the actual reality is that, yes, we are saying that police are out there killing people every day. It happens 3 to 5 times a day, nationwide. These are not questionable killings. These are unarmed people that are not criminals. They're not doing anything criminal. And if they were, You know, like, let's say, like, you know, more recently here in Las Vegas, Byron Williams was killed. Why was he killed? Why was he being pursued? Because they said that he did not have a safety light on his bike. So these kinds of like infractions are minor. You know, it's like, why should someone, if you were truly concerned about this person's life, why would you just not stop them and say, hey man, you need a light on your bike because I don't want you to get hurt? Why would you pursue them and then kill them? That makes no sense. And so, you know, we come from a place of talking about how the media plays this role of basically regurgitating and amplifying the police narrative. And that's where the problem is, because that's keeping the truth from coming out. And that's part of the reason why so many families don't have a voice and don't have the access to or the platform to tell their stories. Oh, and the last thing I want to say is about Seattle. So Seattle was a really amazing trip, extremely powerful. If people aren't paying attention, definitely look it up. There is a 6-block area in downtown Seattle that protesters have taken over. They were basically in battle with police, you know, tear gas, flashbang grenades, all kinds of stuff happening in that 6-block radius. And on June 8th, the protesters, the precinct that was there, the East Precinct, they abandoned the precinct and the protesters took over. And right now they've been occupying that space every day. They're having, you know, it's a beautiful demonstration of organic community coming together to build community, to build discussion around how do we move forward in this movement against police violence. So I think, in my opinion, I think Seattle is kind of leading the way for the rest of the nation to go ahead and occupy spaces and create space to talk about how to move forward locally, statewide, and federally. And I was just really, really glad to be able to witness that and see that. We hope to go back to Seattle soon to continue checking out that movement and documenting.
Yeah, these are incredibly interesting times on so many levels. But Jackie, I want to ask you, how as a community do we empower you and families like yours that have been impacted? How can we help you?
Well, first of all, we need to come as a whole community, because it's going to take the whole village to start having them hold these cops accountable. So it's very important when the victims' families actually have court dates. We need to be at court dates. We need to be at their vigils. It's important that you go to the vigil. You know, if I would have had that from the very beginning, I think that I could have moved a little bit faster. I was kind of abandoned afterwards, and then Nissa came to my rescue.
Yeah, well, again, the work that has been put in for many years that positioned organizations like Force Trajectory to be able to help people. I think it's so important, and in this time where this is such a focus, I think that we need to play full out. So yes, how can the things that you talked about? How can we support these families? Let's do it. Let's get out here and help them represent, as we say, right?
Right.
How important that is to making change, because so many people are representing all over the world right now. You're seeing it. The most change that I definitely have seen in my lifetime in terms of race relations and police brutality. I think we've seen it like the last 2 months. It's just incredible to watch all this, and for my little space in the media here to be able to present families like yours. It's something that I greatly appreciate, Jackie, for you coming on, talking about this, having the courage to talk about it, and you know, my prayers and thoughts are with you and your family, that you'll continue to be on the good fight.
Thank you, and I will.
And Nissa, as far as Force Trajectory Project or any other things within the community that you need help with, would you like to share with our audience how they can contribute?
So right now, you know, my call out to the Las Vegas community is really about paying attention to these broadcasts, like the ones that you're doing. And also, you know, tonight we will be on a panel with Red Rock Democratic Club, and 3 impacted families locally will be featured on that panel. So it's like a 2-hour panel, again, from 7 to 9. All the information's on our social media. You can get the Zoom link off the link in our bio on Instagram. And, right now we're in a space where listening is really required. It's really important that people deeply listen and practice those skills of deeply listening to impacted folks, because a lot of the times what happens in these cases is that families aren't believed. And not only are they not believed, they're not even given the space to be listened to. Just like I said before, they're being turned away from protests and events that are about police violence. And then they're also, sometimes they're invited, but they're tokenized. It's like, oh, come to our thing, show a picture of your loved one, but it's not your place to speak. It's my place to speak because I want to push my political agenda on the crowd. And that happens, that's been happening ever since I've been involved with this movement, but it's happening even more now. And that's problematic because, what's happening is people are assuming that families are victims, that families are, it's like, they're in this victim box. And like, that's just not the reality. The reality is these families want justice more than anybody for their loved one. You know what I'm saying? Like they want justice for their loved one. And so they're going to go through all the channels and paths and, olive branches, et cetera, to find a way to get their story heard, to find a way to get some kind of justice for their loved one. And they find that in each other too. They find that same support. One thing I want to say is that what's been disappointing to me is that, we've been dealing with police violence for hundreds of years in the Americas, and we have yet to see any kind of sustaining infrastructure of support for families. They don't have access to mental health care. They don't have access to any kind of financial compensation or support. They don't have access to medical care or medical bills like police brutality survivors. When they get brutalized by police, a lot of them suffer from mental illness and PTSD and all kinds of stuff. And they have to live with that and live with the medical bills that are just piling up and be told that, oh, sorry, the cop got off on qualified immunity, sucks for you, And so this is something that we have to take care of locally. We need to listen, lift up, identify, and lift up local families, and then deal with the issue locally. So right now, in the midst of our work with impacted folks locally, including Jackie, we are working with each family to come up with a list of demands for their cases. So right now, our ask is really to just, pay attention to our social media. We are going to be doing more panels. We're going to be doing more events to get these stories heard. And the demands, the individual demands, state and also federal, will be coming from those who are directly impacted.
Well, again, I so appreciate all that you're doing to contribute to the empowerment of people, everyone. And for those of you that are watching, there are two things really that I want everyone to get out of these broadcasts that we're doing with these families, and as well as at some point I'd like to do a broadcast with Force Trajectory Project to really learn the inner workings, to learn more. And I was talking to Nissa about that before we came on today. But rather than victimization, which is something that you touched on, Nissa, these broadcasts are about empowerment and accountability for the people that need to be held accountable for their part in all of this. Because if there's no accountability, and if everyone can just always dehumanize the victims, as we've seen over and over and over and over and over again, people are going to keep losing their kids.
Yep.
And their husbands and their sons and their daughters. Women too are dying at the hands of police. Mm-hmm. So this is about empowerment more than anything else. That's my goal on my end in presenting these broadcasts. And again, I look forward to continuing in this climate to create platforms for people like Jackie and like Nissa to be able to come on and be empowered to go out there and do the work that needs to be done. So you got a place here. And again, Jackie, thank you so much for taking the time. And thank all of you for listening to the PRConnections radio show here at PRConnections. Yes.
Just one more last thing, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. So right now, Jackie, she mentioned that she's having surgery and she needs to get these surgeries done. I do want to focus on the public health aspect of this situation. These families, they fight. A lot of times, you know, there's no space for self-care, and they need that support. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, in the work that we've done, you know, since doing this work, we've lost in our personal impacted families network at least 3, 4, 5, probably close to 10 if I dig even deeper, of our impacted families to, you know, trauma, to disease. You know, we're talking about stress-induced illnesses like cancer. So Jackie, you know, has been, she's been really focused on her self-care as much as she can be. And now she's in a space where she really needs to get these surgeries. So I do want to share her Cash App to support fundraising for her surgery that she needs to pay for. Her Cash App is, so it's the cash symbol, and then J as in Jackie, and then Lawrence, LAWRENCE 1969. So that's her Cash App. And, you know, maybe if you can put that in the caption or something, Guy, that would be great. We definitely need Jackie to be super healthy for the campaigns moving forward and all the stuff that's going to be happening in the future. So I hope the audience can, you know, donate to her surgeries.
Yes, I'll do my best to get this into this broadcast. But for those of you who listened, absolutely, we want to support the people who are truly experiencing this on a level that most of us cannot relate to. So again, that comes back to the humanity and families that are going through traumas that if you haven't been through it, you don't know anything about it. So yes, please support Jackie, support Force Trajectory Project, and stay tuned for more broadcasts of this type here at PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. Yeah, we're in it for the long haul, and we're all in it together. Let's empower. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.